quorum 的这把 special meetings today, and
Estoy plata.
be separate.
Tuwid taita.
it was,
Okay.
so just to answer, some of that.
What are, so let me ask you, administrative priorities, I don't see here anything for Deltec or for veterans.
Okay, we wanted to put Beltex over at, the 20 million,
Okay,
at the 20 million.
and how about for veterans?
Veterans, remember they were shortfall at 1 point something last year?
Yeah.
And then with the new legislation, they got fixed. They got fixed, so that 1 point something million that was lacking last year, remember, they got it from the permanent trust. So with that legislation, that should be fixed.
So on the current budget, because, go ahead and ask.
No, go ahead, I'll go out.
Okay, because with Northern Agency, I don't know if this information is being submitted correctly. They were given an update that they're going to, so like Sonoma chapter said they're giving $20,000, and last year they got like $60,000. Yeah, so I just need to know what the numbers were from last year to this year. And that's why I'm just asking for this one, because then that's where we'll know. Like, we gotta track the money, the way these budgets are coming to us and this is the value, this is identity.
Yeah.
We usually get that breakdown, and you've been part of the process, so, I just need to know what the difference is, plus and minus. Are any programs getting a decrease? And then how do you put ARPA money, because some of these, like, some of your administrative priorities, I guess what I'll be asking in there is, do you see if it was ARPA eligible? Because in our O and B reports, we're receiving their ARPA allocation, and it's still very low expenditure. So I just wanted to have that high level conversation with you first, because that informs like our legislative concerns.
Okay, I'm gonna call the meeting back into order. We're next to discuss Chair Parrish and the program now. But we should be on the table.
And then
Okay, you got 10 minutes.
Thank you, committee members, and good morning to everyone on the call on Zoom. This morning, we are going to continue again, as the Chair Pro Tem has mentioned, with the legislation before the committee. And yesterday, we left off on hearing proposed budget for fiscal 2024 for the Office of the Controller. And the committee has heard from the Office of Management's budget on the overview. So I'm going to turn the time back over to Mr. McCabe to continue his presentation for the program. Thank you. Mr. McCabe.
Thank you, Madam Chair Parrish, Vice Chair Pro Tem Slater, members of the committee. I will be very careful not to address you as honorable. Definitely delegate. So I think yesterday where we left off was the summary sheet that appears to have created several levels of confusion. And we'll attempt to try and break out some of the questions that the delegates had regarding general fund only and IDC. And the conversations that just to kind of piggyback off of what just happened, Delegate Damon asked if it's hard to tell what OOC got this year compared to last year. We actually had decreases in both general fund and IDC. They weren't major, but they were definitely there. So we did not receive more this year than we did in the prior year. Delegate Slater, Vice Chair Slater, I would actually ask your direction, do you want us to go line by line? I don't think you wanted that in the prior one, or how do you want to proceed? I mean, we can do it.
Yeah, 10 minutes.
Okay.
Sponsor. So.
Okay, with 10 minutes, we'll go through the, if it's okay with the sponsor, the top, what we call the big four. We'll start with the purchasing. We probably want to focus a good amount of time on the unmet needs request. Yeah. Thank you. So we did hand out a new summary to try and eliminate some of the confusion caused earlier. From a high level, the purchasing department had a fiscal year 23 general fund budget only of 600 and that includes IDC, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's still incorrect. So this has, the 684.43 you see in that first column is general fund and IDC. And this year, we're proposing a general fund budget of 286, 293, and IDC of 224,727 for a total purchasing budget of 511,020, which is less than the prior year, and I'll explain the reasons shortly, but is in line with our current year funding. I will mention, I think there's some inherent confusion in these documents because you're looking at a prior year budget, but then we're also trying to figure out what the current year funding might be. So we'll just try and bridge that as we go. The property budget for fiscal year 23, which included general fund and IDC, was 662,427. That business unit is 107021. We're proposing a general fund budget this year of 286,293, and an indirect cost budget of 302,073 for a total of 588,366, which is short of the 23 budget, but in line with our allocated funding for 2024. The Office of the Controller had a budget last year of 6.186 million of IDC and general fund. And in the current year, we're proposing 3.66 in general fund budget and 2.558 in indirect cost for a total of 6.22, which is slightly higher than our prior year budget and in line with our funding. However, I will explain shortly those increases over the prior year. The annual audit for the Controller's Office last year was budgeted at 1.66 million. This year, and that included general fund and IDC. In the current year, we're budgeting 1.385 to the general fund and 614,000 for indirect costs for a total of $2 million. I'll make comments about the audit costs in a bit. And I think you all have heard my comments before, but I will definitely reiterate those. The fixed cost investment fees, last year budget of 165,000. This year, we're proposing a budget of 395,000, all from the general fund. And then the fixed cost FMIS maintenance, prior year budget of 2,004,000, sorry. 2,004 million in IDC and general fund for 2023. And the current year, we're proposing a general fund budget of 993,000 and 1,020,000 from indirect costs for a total of 2,014,000. And then going on down to the, I guess, what we would call external business units, proprietary, fiduciary, et cetera. We have a permanent fund budget of 18.5 million, CIHSN of 2.3, judicial public safety and special revenue funds of 5.5 million, which are external, finance and accounting scholarship, 60,000. And just for clarification, there is no number in the 2023 general fund budget column because these aren't general fund. I think this is where the confusion was before. These weren't general fund funded and they're not intended to be. Business unit 87001, the supply center has a proprietary fund budget of 200,000. The home loan program, 450,000, personal loan program, 420,000. All three of those are proprietary funded. 1982 chapter fund, 101,000 out of special and revenue. 1986 chapter fund, 106,000 roughly out of the special revenue fund. Land acquisition, 623,000 budget out of special revenue. Graduate fund, roughly 189,000 out of special revenue fund. TG&E trust fund, 14,000 out of special revenue. Scholarship finance assistant trust, 44,000 out of special revenue. And then the last few scholarship financial assistance, 52,000 out of fiduciary. Handicap trust, 45,000 out of fiduciary. Senior Citizen Trust, 43,000 out of fiduciary. The Retirement Fund, 5.8 million out of fiduciary. The Veterans Trust Fund, 615,000 out of fiduciary. And the Workers' Compensation is 47 out of proprietary. As far as the proprietary funds, total 1.1 million. Those are, how are those generally funded? Just in general? Yeah. So these funds make their own revenue, which makes them proprietary in nature. Fiduciary funds, the 27.4 million total budget, the bulk of that being permanent and citizen, are funded by the trust funds, the investment account, and the investment section. And of course, the special revenue funds budget of 6.6 million, the bulk of that being 5.5 for public safety, are external or special revenue funds, but funded for specific purposes. Any questions on that before we get into maybe some of the detail?
We're gonna continue the presentation and we'll ask some questions at the end.
Okay. So we'll get into, I think, given that we have 10 minutes and I probably burned through 5 of that already.
Yeah, on that one.
1 minute, so let's turn our attention toward the unmet needs. I think that's probably where most of the discussion will be anyway. If you look at Exhibit E, which is at the very front of your packet, it's like the 4th or 5th page. It's Exhibit E, fiscal year 2024 unmet needs budget. We're asking for 1.3 million in unmet needs costs. Most of that is
Honorable President Chair. We'll just send down, new exhibit A that was given to me yesterday at 4. Because I was told that exhibit E was revised, again, after the revised exhibits were sent to you guys yesterday by Peggy. So I'm going by the most recent, the 4 p.m. from yesterday, and it appears that exhibit E is different than what Mr. McCabe is reading from. So I'm not sure which one we're supposed to be using.
I'm saying what you have from 4 p.m. yesterday is different than what he's about to read.
It sounds like it is. The one I have 4 p.m. yesterday that was sent by Liddell is says at the very bottom for exhibit E, it says 2,770,912 for unmet needs.
And what was this thing that's printed out? It's 4 p.m. yesterday.
Vice Chair, that was earlier when Mr. Rob Willie emailed me his own and I did it and I handed it out.
But Rob, what's going on?
Okay, for clarification, Chair, the exhibit that we had reprinted, the exhibit A, is the version which does not have amounts in the general fund. So kind of like the schedule that you're asking for.
Yeah.
I updated it really quick and then I sent it to Ramona, and that's the version that got handed out a few minutes ago. To take out those amounts out of the general fund, which weren't general fund that Mr. Vial had explained. So we tried to fix that, but I didn't know that you wanted indirect cost, not schedule 2. So the schedule is actually flawed. And then that exhibit E, I can have Mr. Davis elaborate on that because he's the one that actually sent that out last night.
Yes, I'm not too sure where the numbers came from the original exhibit E's. I did correct it and I sent it over.
That's the 4 p.m. one?
Yeah.
Okay. It's now, do you have this handout?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's
The one that doesn't have a total at the bottom?
No, it has the should have 2.7 million at the bottom.
Okay, because what Rob, I guess, gave to Ramona that was printed out doesn't have anything.
Yeah, I have.
Now, you have handouts?
Yeah.
The one from 4 yesterday, exhibit B has fixed cost minus and also has a total of 7,013,147. And the handout does not have it to.
How much does it have to increase to us?
You're looking at this one.
This is.
This, because of you, you're making- You should probably just.
Yeah.
Okay, so, alright, so for the sake of clarity. Yes, we had a discussion earlier about breaking down the IDC and general fund stuff. But we didn't really need this right now, and I think that this is starting to distract because it's not consistent with what was at 4 p.m. yesterday. So there's some missing numbers and things like that. So committee members, what you see here, just to review again, is Mr. Willie just identified that these are the only general fund accounts. These other ones are all special revenue, et cetera. So he's not showing you the FY23 special revenue allocations out of them, but this Kapati sent out this morning at
Right.
10:29. And at 10:29, this has the correct exhibit A through E. And we confirmed that with the controllers. So thank you for trying to listen to us, Mr. Willie. Good. Committee members, remember yesterday, we didn't include the controller's office, that there could be an amendment to add in the correct budget documents. We're past 10 minutes now, I'm glad we caught that. Yeah, we passed it, what was handed out, just kind of. Controller, how much more time do you think you need to present?
I just wanted to give a breakdown of unmet needs.
Okay.
Vice Chair, could we just stick with the way that we usually is, and then we'll go into the amendments afterwards? Or how would you like to proceed? You could either.
You have a legislation, don't you?
We do.
Okay.
So what do you, I guess, what do you say?
I was talking about all the documentation and all that. The changes that were made, but. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's gonna have to be amendment later. Is there something else you want?
No, what, 5 minutes, 10 minutes?
Yeah, just a few minutes. Thank you, Madam Chair, Vice Chair. Apologies for the paper shuffle. I think we got it right. Do all of you have this exhibit E that has 2.7 million at the bottom? I think it was just handed out. That's the correct document. I would encourage you though to look at, maybe compare it to what the previous one was in your binder, because it is significantly different. So just to kind of summarize unmet needs, for the Office of the Controller, Business Unit 107022. We're asking for an additional 1.317. Most of that sits with positions that are currently vacant, and we actually budgeted them at half a year. I have talked to BNF about doing an assessment. I do believe that once we bring in either an updated FMIS system, which by the way, I did meet with Oracle last week, and even they say our current system is outdated and they're looking forward to presenting a new one. So once we get something more modern in place, I do feel like maybe some of these processes that take manpower could be streamlined, and maybe we don't need some of these vacant positions, but that's why we only budgeted it at half a year. So we'll be making that assessment. That's where the bulk of the 1.3 million is. We are asking for a supplies budget of roughly 177,000 because our current allocation, we weren't able to afford that. And we're looking at some of the consultant fees that we're gonna maybe need, namely a consultant, and actually a Navajo-owned CPA that we do use for audit preparation, and who actually drafts our financial statements for us at the audit, which is another reason why I think maybe the audit fee could come down. And we're asking for about 100,000 extra in that. The rest of it are smaller amounts that we'll be asking for, but the bulk of it is in positions. And we're also pursuant to an audit finding that the AG's office, the Auditor General's office did an internal performance audit recommending some position changes, and one of them was the assistant controller. So we did add that new position in, and hopefully if that goes through, the new assistant controller is actually sitting right here to my right, so hopefully that'll happen. But that's part of the ask that we put in there. The property management business unit 108021 business unit, we're asking for an extra 203,000. That's actually also mostly position related for vacant positions. Purchasing business unit 107020 is also asking for 306,000. And it's also position related. And again, we prorate those at half a year, given the time frame we think it may need to bring those on. The rest of it is FMIS related. And I will actually have you direct your attention to the original budget unmet needs. There was an $18.5 million request, which I heard broke a record. In talking with Robert this morning, that's really for document storage through the FMIS system. Given that we're releasing the RFQ, if we haven't done it already, we're about to here in the next day or so. It's not necessary to spend that, especially if we're going to make a change. And I don't know whether we're going to make a change or not, but certainly if we do, if MIS comes to the table, wins the RFP with a new system, we can address this expenditure then. So we took it out. So the new document doesn't have that in there. We do need to update. I'll draw your attention to business unit 118022, the big number, the 654. We do need to update the renewal maintenance for FMIS, because no matter what we do with the system, we're going to need that system for another year to run, at least another year to run things parallel while we transfer data, et cetera, into a new system or convert to their newer modern system, whatever decision we might make. We also purchased mass notification software. What that's designed to do is, in the case of an active shooter or any other kind of emergency, it'll flash an emergency message on all OC computers with instructions on what to do. That's what that software is for. We're also asking to fund some remote workers, and we did purchase, my office has begun to implement DocuSign as e-signatures. And I've started to get documents that I'm e-signing, and it's becoming a lot more efficient. And we look to implement that department-wide here in the next month or so. And so that new cost will go in. That one's a smaller cost. I don't remember exactly the subscription fee, but it's a few $1,000s a month. So it's not one of the bigger numbers in that 654. The big number in the 654 will be the maintenance and renewal for FMIS. And then the last one I think is a bigger number is business unit 118022, asking for 144,000 for document records, et cetera, which is much less than what we originally thought is 18.5 million. So I wanted to address those members of the committee. Obviously, thank you for your time. Thank you, Chair Parrish, for sponsoring. And we're happy to answer any questions from the committee. Yeah.
Thank you. Your question?
I do. Appreciate it. Thank you, Chair. So appreciate that Exhibit A, there was an attempt to meet the needs of the Budget and Finance Committee. So we can, I would like to see that as either new Exhibit A. It's just, I don't know if we could change, because it says general fund budget. Are these proprietary funds considered general funds after it's passed? So I think that's just where the confusion is, like we think that. The second area, when it comes to Exhibit E, what is then the priority? Is this how we're ranking the priorities on how we see it? And if so, can you break down that 1.3 million when carrying few areas in there, like some supply, your consultants, and possible vacant positions? If you could just break that down, because as we move forward, you know, this budget can also become tight. Because we're looking for money priorities where And we got the president administrative priorities, so you received 139, an additional 139,000 to restore positions and operating. So I just want to see then what are the priorities, how we can move forward. But if it's not with what we have in our base allocation, then what's the conversations working with the president's office, like on a UUMP, to get the controller's operating budget? Like, what is it that you need right now? And then we have talked about possibly in the future setting up like this vacancy type of fund. Because I don't agree that we should budget positions that are vacant or chronically vacant, because it just ties up money. But what can we do to create a policy where there's something where you do get a applicant, then you could have those positions. The other part of my question is this middle section here.
Yes.
Would these be considered fixed costs in the future? We did have FMIS on the fixed costs, but then we had paid off the FMIS. I just need to know if the maintenance part of it was ever considered fixed costs. And that would be my question, because these sound like systems that you need to conduct business at the office of the controller. So I just want to ask that question where it comes to the fixed cost. Thank you.
Sure.
Yes, thank you, Delegate Crotty, for the questions. To answer your question, I don't believe we put these in any kind of priority, but I will break down at least the Office of Control priority. So as I mentioned, we didn't really get funded. The funding that we were allocated for 24 only covered our payroll, department-wide, division-wide. So we are asking for an extra 177 and that 1.3 for supplies. And then, you know, the consultant number is, we're asking for an extra 100,000. I guess, you know, I don't know how much of a priority that is, and I think we can probably, we're asking for it, and it's definitely a need, but it may not be a high priority need. We can look at that again. We would ask for it though, for consideration, but if you're wanting us to rank it by priority, it could probably fall to one of the lower ones. We definitely need it, but it's not like we need it now type thing. And just to clarify, the 139 that we got from the Office of the President, that was a result of that miscalculation in the fringe benefits. So they reallocated that money. So it wasn't really an extra award for us. It was just, we put the wrong percentage in up front, and then they allocated that to the divisions. Oh, yeah. One of the other reasons, and I apologize for not mentioning this earlier, but in the office, and this is why there's kind of some inherent confusion how we do this. So the prior year budget that you guys see in Form A for the Office of the Controller, column A, that NNC approved original budget, that's the 2023 budget from the prior year, but that included an extra allocation that was made in the prior year from permanent fund, correct? From the permanent fund interest, which is something we didn't include this year. So we're $936,000 short from the prior year, which is the bulk of this 1.37 unmet need, but that's a result of last year we got a permanent fund allocation. We haven't factored that in this year, whether we're going to get that or not. So that's one of the main reasons why there's this big unmet need number in the Office of the Controller. But to continue with the priority, I do believe the Assistant Controller salary is a priority. It's something that's been needed for a long time, and I'd like to get that completed. And we do have plans to fill Robert's position at we have an internal plan to promote someone as well. And then the rest of it, well, the bulk of it is the vacant positions. And I do agree with you, Delegate Crotty, that it's hard to budget for vacant positions, but it's even harder to take them out of the budget. And then if we need it, have to go back and try and figure out how we're going to fund it. So we put that in there at halftime, or I'm sorry, half of FTE, 50%. I do think maybe there's a better way to do that, but at this time, that's how that worked out. And that's the bulk of it, Delegate Crotty. We can, I think maybe with some of the information you're requesting, up here on the board, maybe some of those other questions as to what those vacant positions are. And I do actually believe we have it. Yeah, in our form. What form number is that? Where it has the vacant positions? 4, 5.
So the your first tab.
Yeah, well, under the Office of Controller tab, there's Form 5. And there, a lot of that information is there.
So 2 vacancies.
No, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm looking at-
Yeah, there's a few of them.
We have 1, 2, 3.
And so those are the, so it's about 397 total in vacant positions, budgeted at half. On Form 5. It's in this. In this,
Yeah, but what happened?
if you look under Office of the Controller, it's the list, yeah.
How many?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So that's a good 400,000 of what we're asking, then 100,000 of supply, or roughly 200,000 of supplies, 100 in consultant. And then there's other things in there, but those are the big items. And I don't want to reveal salaries. Yeah, yeah. But it's in here. You guys have that.
Yeah. Thank you. So, I see the priorities. Did you answer the question regarding fixed costs for the maintenance?
Yes,
And-
no, I'm sorry.
And then if we could just give me high level regarding fringe benefit, it's I thought, and you asked the question at Firewalk, so the fringe benefit percentage change, our budget's going to be reallocated. So now I'm hearing, I just need to know what happened with that, so I could I'm trying to understand where all the money is. And I don't see that you have any legislative concerns from the past for conditions of a corporation. But when I look at your performance report from last year, and I'm gonna take OMB, we have that visible copy of that document, and it is searchable, so if you just search for controller, it's on the digital page, I think 81. There is, and there's always been a concern with, accurate and compliant contracts encumbered within a reasonable time frame. Receiving records are complete within a reasonable time frame and tracked appropriately in FMIS. So it looks like you're meeting the criteria, but we're still hearing challenges from the Office of the Controller. So these are always self-reporting. I'm going to draft up a legislative concern. We have a template, but if we could have a discussion about what does the Office of the Controller, and if it's working with OMB, what needs to happen so that a vendor is paid out?
Mhm.
Or if a program is submitting documents and are not providing all of the right documents, like how are we verifying and how are we tracking them? I think Controller and OMB is part of that, but then does there need to be training for programs, and then that's a DPM issue, right, or there's a workforce issue. So I'd like to have just that broad conversation, because the way we have to put, did they get a copy of how we're going to do our legislative concerns and conditions of appropriation? I'm gonna share my copy with you, so you could see what I have to put in. And what I'll just note is that we'll be working on this, and if I could ask our attorney pro temp, how then we could fix this, and what's the time frame they'll need for these legislative concerns as we gather them all together during the budget process. Thank you.
So you have it written out, so you can.
That I'm gonna give him the template, the Worley gave us a digital copy. But I wanna share with the division. You're not considered the division director, or interim controller a copy, so they can see what we're gonna be doing. I know you were a division director before, I don't know if you ever had a legislative concern or commission.
I've been around. So thank you, Doug. Can I answer?
Wait a second, so. Are you motioning to add a list? I'm confused. Are you just saying you're gonna do it later time?
I'm just asking questions,
You're saying you want to do legislative concern,
yeah,
then are you offering that now?
no, sir, I'm asking questions, I just gave him the paperwork.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Vice Chair Slater and Pro Tem and also Delegate Crotty for the question. So I believe there were 3 questions. The first one asking about fixed costs. So on that updated Exhibit E, the last 5, all the FMIS maintenance, those are all fixed costs. They should be in the fixed cost budget. So those aren't part of our general fund, or it's part of the fixed cost that we presented. The second question regarding the fringe benefit. You are correct, ma'am, that I did ask this at Fire Rock, and there was a reallocation. So what happened was, as we all know, the original BIM included an fringe benefit percentage that was much higher than what it actually was. It was actually almost 2 times. So that savings, that resulted saving between what we originally had in the BIM to the new number was actually reallocated, and that's where that 139 came from. So it really wasn't a reallocation from the president. It was just whatever we saved in that fringe benefit that actually went to all the departments. That was allocated at some level. And we got notice of it a couple of weeks ago, right? A few days ago that we got an extra amount. And then we redid all the forms. And then to address your legislative, the discussion on the legislative concern. I agree with you, Delegate Crotty, and I've made these comments several times that we're just notoriously slow. I will say, and it's just time to have this discussion, that the pace that the Navajo Nation seems to crawl entity-wide. I do believe that once we modernize our central ERP system, our accounting system, and our resultant modules for HR, procurement, and other modules that are part of a modern ERP system, a lot of this stuff will be inherently solved. But right now, we're stuck in really policy upon policy upon policy. And I can't tell you how many times I get emails or I'll get CC'd on an email that someone put in the wrong object code. And even something that simple has to go all the way back. And it just results in days, if not weeks, if not months of payment delays. And as I've kind of said before in other meetings, there's an easier way. There's an easier way we can do this. So I think the RFQ for the new system, a lot of that will be inherently solved. But I do think there needs to be a policy revisit. Some of our process, to be honest, are backwards. We don't follow 6B a lot of times. And the accounting department will receive things after, transactions have been procured or initiated. Sometimes we're at the mercy of an invoice will show up and we have no idea what it's for. It's not even in the system. And frankly, that falls on the division directors too, on knowing how to initiate the proper 6B process. So Delegate Crotty, this is a priority of my department. I've already communicated this to my managers that we have to get better. We simply have to get better. And part of that is revisiting the technology that's available to us, which we're doing now. and then revisiting the policies and procedures. There's just too many steps that frankly are just not necessary. And what I hope to come out of this is a system that is faster and doesn't sacrifice accountability or transparency, because there is a way to do that. And hopefully we have buy-in. That's the other big key, is a lot of people don't want to change. And we just need buy-in on this. So I hope that answers your questions.
So what I need help for is working with our legislative council, the controller, because it's all of navigation programs. It's gonna be a comprehensive legislative concern on what has been, how the migrant administration has been trying to either change or to work on things, and then as legislative, what we could do to offer that support, so it's a legislative concern. And then there's some requirements in there to change and modify, like review their policy, review their training. I think it'll affect all of the different divisions. So I'll just need help, that's my request, that I would just need that technical assistance from,
Okay.
in terms of public.
So you wanna, how do you want to do that?
Well, I just need to know from Lorraine, when does she need this completed by for the comprehensive budget? And then we can have a follow-up with the controller, and as we talk, and letting the other division directors.
Okay, because you could work on something today.
Yeah.
Or when this comes to us at budget and finance, in between now and then,
That's
you
what,
could work with her
Yes.
and control it.
yeah,
Okay,
The
well,
second-
let's do that. We'll add that into our notes, and then Lorraine, we're not gonna add it into today's session, but when it comes back, we're back in the legislature. So that budget finance and comprehensive. Budget.
That's,
So I think we need to sit down with you a little more and hear and tell you exactly what she wants in there. Mr. Azar.
You mentioned something about records. Is that storage or documents, physical storage or computer storage, and does that have anything to do with the Department of Records management? Review, budget money for them? And not give it to them, so that money is in the record committee. That's not.
Okay,
Understand?
any other questions? To Doug, David, we're gonna go back to you.
You can ask.
All right, well,
And my question for overall process, probably will be.
okay. Controller, please respond, Mr. Azar.
Sure, thank you, Vice Chair Slater, Pro Tem Chair, and thank you, Delegate Azarick, for the question. So what was originally proposed was 18.5 million for a system that allowed us to scan and management documents digitally. We took it out now just because there's no reason to spend 18.5 million if we're gonna end up changing anyway. So we'll revisit this at some point if it's necessary, but in an effort to modernize, this will have to be considered at some point to get documents digitized. I think some of this too is, we're required to hold, at least by federal standards, at least 7 years back. So I think, you guys have all been to OC, you've seen the boxes of paper. Well, I think what we're also trying to do is digitize some of that, so that's reproducible, but doesn't necessarily need to be in paper form. We follow all document standards that we need for retention now, but it just results in those boxes of paper you see there. So I do think that this will have to be visited at some point, probably when we decide on a new system. But we do need to, at some point, digitize some of the stuff so that it's not, all paper. Well, right now, it's just in paper format. Basically, I said, let's just continue this until we figure out a new system, and then we'll figure out the cost later. I hope that answered your question.
Good.
Yeah,
Mr. Ezra?
just a follow-up, and basically, well, my question was, is, you're asking for money through the controller here. Records and management will also ask for money for storage and transportation, that kind of stuff, all of that, stuff, but they do also. I mean, we do some of that stuff, that's what we were talking about a long time ago. But I'm still having a issue about transportation and storage and person to staff here or stuff like that. I said, that, you know, but basically. It's time to share.
Thank you, Pro Tem Chair Slater and Delegate Azareth for the question. That's a good question, and we'll coordinate. I don't know the answer to it, actually. So we'll coordinate with Department of Record Management and see, but we took it out one way or the other, so we'll figure that out.
Thank you.
Committee members, any further questions or discussion? Yes, Delegate David?
Thank you very much. My question was, we keep asking, this, in terms of my mind too. We're asking about the allocation, the funding from last year to this year. On the record right now, I asked it off the record, but I would like to have this document produced by Office of Management and Budget, and it's similar to the documents that's seen here. It's the IDC document. This document that should is all the business unit numbers, but in 4 columns. Out of those 4 columns, one of the items be for the general fund allocation for 2023, and then the IDC for 2023. Then the second 2 columns for the general fund budget for 2024 and the IDC for 2024, all on every single one of them. And then on the total on the bottom, that total should come out, for Chair, to one, the recommendation from the 3 branch chiefs agreement, but the budget finance changed that recommendation and we finalized that. So those numbers should come out to what was the budget and finance committee's recommendation or approved resolution that's in the bid manual. I don't have the resolution number right now, but I would really like to have that information at the start of the comprehensive budget hearing, no later than that. For Chair, because that will give an overall view to know how much we're paying each and every program, because we're asking for questions. We have questions about one, where these funds going, and if we can cross compare those funds from last year to this year, or the reallocation funds would be on there too as well. This document right here that we just got this morning would show how much money each program is getting, and that will show the increase or decrease in amount of the general fund allocation that's going to each program throughout, not only the executive branch, but also the other 2 branches too as well. For Chair, that's my request record, and I don't want that and go nowhere. I really want that document. Pro Chair, and I don't know if that's a directive or the OMB, or if they wanted to just do that, but that's my request so that we can know where these funds go. I know I got a document before the office produced that, and that was done by former OMB staff, Arnold J. Back then, that was probably what, 5-6 years ago. That was the last time I've seen that, but that'd be good to get a document like that. Show that where all these funds are coming from, or where they're allocated.
Thank you. Committee members, any other questions or discussion? On your point, after we passed, my thought was when we passed all of the legislation, that we just should do directly after that. Yeah. You stated this in the directive. Okay, exactly.
As long as it's on record and you have that.
I mean, I'm trying to make the little thing right now, just to, yeah. So, okay. It should be. Also, my chili's ready to be picked up, so.
So we need you here in person.
What would you do about
I would
it?
have,
You wouldn't have to raise your voice.
I wouldn't.
Okay, committee members, we have Doug Crotty, and I just want to remind the committee that there's an amendment that was sent out. The updated information is one that. This is why I sent at 10:29 a.m. And so we really need to amend legislation at some point to include that. Okay. Chloe Crotty?
Oh, yes, Chair, thank you. So now moving on from the fringe benefit reallocation, I just need to, can we make sure that what this 2.8 million? Because at first we thought it was what executive, the additional amount executive received, so I just need to verify that.
What
this
is that
2.8
document? That's
This
your,
is the,
no, I mean, I'm saying, you want to verify what, that it is,
that it's the fringe benefit, the change in the percentage of fringe benefit. The reallocation, because it says general fund from president's.
no, this is. This is the difference in the base amount for the executive.
Okay.
Fiscal year 23
Yes.
to fiscal year 2022.
So where can we find the fringe benefit difference? Percentage difference.
What do you mean by that?
So if the percentage was changed and decreased, where did that money, did it stay with the programs?
Yeah, it stays, I mean, there was no allocation that was made beforehand, so.
I just need that to be verified, because I think that's a lot of assumption. But so that's what I need, just to know what happens with the fringe benefit percentage, because that question was asked at Myra from the controller, was that 2 weeks ago? So I just need confirmation.
You're saying if the month, well, they drafted all their budgets according to the correct fringe benefit rates, so that's what I'm trying to understand is what difference are you talking?
I just need to verify that they did do that. And then the other thing is, yeah, it's my question, so can let someone answer.
No, that's what my friend, I think the chief of staff, because that's who signs the budget at the end of the day, right, is the chief of staff, so.
Somebody, yeah.
So is Arvin still here?
No. And then, going back to OMB's, report on letter D. So we have at least 4 areas that have been highlighted. And we'll need those kind of operations worked on. So, which includes the Office of the Controller, Administrative Financial Services. So there's an asterisk here. That the title 12, chapter 2, the above Navigation Council resolution only addresses the minimum qualifications for the navigation controller position. There are no authorities of the various departments within the Office of the Controller. In reality, there is no actual plan of operation for the Office of the Controller and all of its programs. So that needs to be addressed in terms of, I see the statutory reference and 2011. So we would need a plan of operation from your office if we're collecting the directive. So this would be the directive to also create a property management plan of operation, to update the Navigation Permanent Fund plan of operation, and the scholarship plan for financing and accounting. And looking at, I'm going to move on to section F of the OMB report. So when it comes to external, for your ARPA allocation, if you could give me insight, you do have OOC FRF dollars, and so are you maximizing, are you utilizing all of these dollars first to help with your vacancies? Are they considered eligible? Or just give me a high level, what's the issue here? Because you have 11.2 million. And then in what then is the plan for the investment income? I'm not sure if we ever did a fund management for that, because right now it has 248,000. And looking at the other one that we'll need to have a conversation on is the remaining funding from the hardship assistant too. That's approximately 106 million. I just wanna, either like directives or how the committee wants to move forward, with this budget. The last item that I'm gonna cover is, section G, the single audit report. We've received a lot of updates. And so what I would just want to make sure in this directive, that we just create a timeline for consistency, how, what is going to be the response from, the Office of the Controller on these issues, as we get ready to accept the audit. So I think it's just like in terms of accountability, setting up like a consistent way the committee works with the Office of the Controller with, their audit, their single audit, finding. So this is from fiscal year 2021. Right, so this is from fiscal year 2021. So they're not. So I'm concerned with like number 2, when they're repeat findings, what is the plan to address that? And just let us know then, so the impact, describe, the cost. I guess just that continued discussion from how the committee and the chair want to move forward to get these audit progress from 2021. Thank you for coming.
Members, others.
Question back to Chair is. That's a lot of information and helpful information that Madam Chair is indicating. Staff writing this down so we can put this in. I'm trying to put my own little listing together, but I might be missing something. I just want to make sure that all this information is going back so that we can put all this in one comprehensive directive after we approve this. I just want to make sure that everything's being, because everything's being done because we constantly have this stuff, and then when it comes back down time of it, half of our stuff we don't get as a response from the programs because either the communication is breakdown or we don't issue those emails out to them. It's just basically a communication break. And we don't follow, but it'd be really good to get that information. Mr. Pro Tem Chair, if we need to leave, one of us can help assist in the process too as well.
Okay, so I have like about 8 things that I've written down. A few of the items that Delegate Crowley raised were more about the direction of the committee. So following the audit issues, things like that, that's not necessarily put back on the controller. We need to define how we work with them. I think she was asking that of us. So if the committee wants to vote on that as a directive, I'd suggest we pull out the things that we want to plan internally, and then we do a directive that is to the programs and all these, et cetera. Now, for that, you know, we can take a break after the legislation and review that before we go into the next one. I hope that staff is writing this down. But I'm just jotting notes as well to try and capture what's being discussed here. In terms of one item that Delegate Crowley brought up, back to the fringe benefit. It's OMB who reviews it, so we should ask OMB right now about your question. Mr. Bial, Delegate Crowley raised a question about are the correct fringe benefit rates being used in the budgets that are being submitted to us? So can you answer that question?
Actually, that's not my question.
Oh.
My question is, from the discussion at Fire Rock, when there was a change in the percentage from the fringe benefit, there was a higher percentage and then it was reduced. Do those budgets, do these current budgets that we're seeing, does it reflect that reduction in the fringe benefit percentage? And then what happened to that money from the higher percentage rate to the lower? There's X here, what happened to that money?
Okay. You have that?
Committee members, in response to Delegate Crosby's question. Well, let's just use OMB as an example. Our first budget preparation would be using for regular employee fringe benefits at 53% rate. However, as you refer to the new information that came from the controller's office, the fringe was reduced to 43%. So there was a little bit of savings, you could call it, due to that. We just rebudgeted it elsewhere in our budget. And I would say by and large, if not everybody, probably did the same thing. In other words, they didn't put it in a separate pot somewhere. To just stay with the particular business unit programs. And that's how all the budgets are coming in then, using the correct fringe benefit.
Sorry, Carter, do you feel that answers your question?
I just feel like it's still more assumptions, but, we'll just try, I could just ask every budget that comes through. If, how did they redistribute?
Are you aware of any systematic effort by leadership to recapture that 7-point-something% and reallocate it for another purpose?
No,
Are you controller?
no.
Thank you. We received a notice that we got an extra 139, So-
139,000.
and that came from the fringe, from what I understand.
So they changed your sort of division-wide planning allocation, increased to $139,000.
We had to redo, right, our Form A, with that new number.
If they need a few minutes to understand it, let's get a few minutes, because I don't want all the assumptions, I just need to know where the money's at. Because last year this happened with the GWA, they started using the personal lab savings fund, and then it wasn't clear how the programs were using it. But if we could just get an idea, so OMB reallocated in their budget, we just need to know if that's what happened with other budgets.
We did the same.
Okay.
Just so,
What were you saying, $139,000?
That's from the,
that's the number we got. We reallocated in ours, yeah.
Oh, but that's not the trend, that is the increase,
from the
that's
base,
the year-over-year difference.
okay, increase from base.
No, okay,
Yeah, we need to figure that out then. I don't know what that is.
so you, this is the.
Also, who distributed that? Did you hear that? This $3.8 million document?
No.
Who handed that out?
Ramona.
Then they.
Did you get it from Mark?
I got it, I just.
That's what this.
So I did the one I got it, yeah.
Is
Can you ask?
I think they're separate.
So. Like the bigger fringe amount that he's talking about.
You just gotta cut that.
Mr. McCabe's response right now is not referring to the fringe amount.
Okay.
It's referring to this
So
also.
that,
I don't know how.
that needs to be argued, the president.
Yeah, but then we'll be.
See, my brain works a certain way, and this is just not all making.
My question that you, that's, when you first put your budget together, then there was a change, the fringe benefit. Then you got an extra 7%. What was that total, that 7%?
I don't want 39.
No, that's not, it's not.
Mr. Our delegate,
I don't have that. Thank you.
It was the 7% of their salaries.
Oh, but this also. Okay, so this is it then. This document is not right.
Wait, where's, are you saying 139,000 there? Oh,
See, this is for.
oh, that's different.
This is what the increase.
I thought you were just saying 139,000.
So what I'm saying is, how much money did you actually, what was that value? What was that amount when you had to change it? How much money more did you get, you can pull from your fringe benefit rate? How much money was that?
And ask for.
Thank you, Delegate Damon. I apologize for the confusion. So I think we actually need to go back and look at it, because I don't know if we're clear either. Here's what happened. So the 2.8 increase to the base budget was the difference in the revenue projection from the prior year. However,
This.
right. However, there was an adjustment that we just made not too long ago. It's the source of that adjustment that I don't think we're clear on. My assumption was it was the fringe reallocation, maybe it wasn't. But we did get an extra amount. We did have to redo Exhibit A within the last week, right? Or 2 weeks ago.
Was that the 139 allocation? And I think that is the pool.
Okay, so you're saying it is 139.
Yeah. But we could, it might be a better question for,
But Jelly Jim wants to know, you originally put your budget together, right, with the 51%?
Yeah, let me explain a little bit, maybe you're not understanding, you might be understanding. So, the president this year got 118 or $220 million.
Mhm.
Out of that $120 million, there was an increase from last year. That increase, Mr. Bial, maybe, I don't know, what was it, 116? How much was our base last year? Let's say it was 116 or 17. Out of that 120, the Budget and Finance Committee took the portions of that money from the land board and took that out of the 120 and minus that from the 120. So the remainder amount that was available was $2.8 million. That $2.8 million from the increase from FY23 to FY24. That's what this pool is. That's what I'm understanding this pool of money is coming from. Is the above base, is above the 2023 allocated base amount. So the president this year had an extra $2.8 million. Out of that $2.8 million, the president gave you guys 139,000. That's what I'm understanding, Mr. Bial, is that correct? That's it. But the question though now is that on a different scenario, you guys put your budget together back in a month ago, and then all of a sudden there was a concern, someone found out that the fringe benefit rate was wrong. So from when you first got your first allocation a couple months ago or a month ago, what was that increase amount that you used of your savings? What was that for the controller's office? That's not the 139, because that's different. Yeah.
no, and
It's
you're
basically just the personnel cost difference.
right.
And where did that money, where did you reallocate that money to? You put it to positions, but how much was that money? How much was it?
Yeah, thank you, Delegate David, for the question. There was a change from the base, you're right. And we did keep it separate. So the very first budget we put together, we factored in that 2.8 that you're referring to, which was the difference from the funding amount from last year. Then the fringe benefit, so they're separate. Then the fringe benefit issue happened. I don't think we're sure what that calculation was, but we did adjust it and it went to operating. So we adjusted for whatever that fringe was. I'm not sure if we know that number, but for the sake of what happened, you're right, it was totally separate. So we did base on that 2.8 that you're referring to on that sheet, which was the difference from the funding amount and then the revenue projections from this year to last year. Then the fringe benefit adjustment happened and the BIM was corrected. And this is what prompted my question at Fire Rock, is that going to be reallocated? The original answer we got was no. I think that's what they said at Fire Rock, but we did make an adjustment and I'm not sure of that number yet. So we can get that to you. But you're right, it was totally separate. Right? Yeah.
In your initial instruction from the president's office and how much you had to work with, was it just used last year's allocation?
With the adjustment with the 2.8, yeah. We did do that.
And when did you, it was just
I mean, the allocation based on,
months ago, you got that?
yeah, then we got another, then we did the fringe at reallocation not too long ago. And I think all
When were you notified about 130,000?
I think at the beginning, right? Because that was part of the first one.
Oh, okay, so they just said, use your 2023 numbers, and then we're gonna give you 139,000.
That's their allocation.
Was that based off of any sort of priority, or you just said, here's 132,000?
I don't know.
You didn't say it's for X, Y, or Z, thank you.
No, that was done on the OPVP side, yeah. Sorry if I confused it, but
We're we're a bit confused, but that, I just don't like, I don't like confusion. Because in the theory of chaos, I don't know if it's intentional confusion, because then I start thinking, why is this not clear? If we want to be transparent and know where the money's going.
So what are you still confused upon?
I feel that finally at this point, after what, hours of discussion, we're finally clear where we're at with the money.
Okay. Kind of it.
Yeah.
And
That said, what led to this discussion is a series of assumptions too, right? So it's not a series. The premise of all these questions is a series of assumptions, so I think,
So my concerns that I addressed, are those gonna be answered from the plan of operation? And,
plan of operations,
ARPA and the single audit, I'm still waiting for that response.
so. I guess the way I interpreted that is, those are directives that we need to do, but. I mean, ARPA, right, we're the legislative body, we decide what to do, that's not the responsibility of the executive branch. If you want to ask them to develop an expenditure plan for the interest income, then that can be a directive. But I was interpreting that you want the committee, and that's why you're referencing the chair and myself to the direction of that, and then on the audit. And then for the plan of operations updates, I was interpreting that as a directive or a condition of appropriation that we're going to include in the comprehensive budget for them to submit that back to us. Or, because the Department of Justice is going to be really involved in their comprehensive plan of operation for OOC. And then you asked about property management. I know there are some property management policies, but if you want, I think it's property management department plan of operation. So
Those theoretically can be directives pro tem. But I would like an answer from Office of the Controller regarding their 11.2 million left in ARPA. So that would.
okay, so
that would-
let me point to, and you're referring to their administrative support costs, right? Or,
Yes, because they have an unmet need, so they're asking us for money from general fund, but they have 11.2 million in ARPA. So I'd rather use or identify ARPA money first, or else let us know in your unmet needs, because I didn't hear that in the presentation. These are not ARPA eligible expenses. Like, we need to push this ARPA expenditure, or else my chapters read water wells and other things, E911, broadband. So. if
that
there's-
would be appropriate this one, so.
Well, this was appropriate, when did you sponsor it, 20?
Mark's bill we passed in August of 22, is that right?
No, the first round, you sponsored
Oh,
it.
that's not what was happening.
Yeah, 180.
For the state of Washington budget.
I'm talking about this administrative money was allocated. to
Oh,
that
no,
one
no,
year.
But we're talking about less. Okay, so interim controller, you have an open question on your $11 million available balance in FRI funding and what your plan is to expend.
Thank you, Vice Chair Pro Tem Chair Slater and Delegate Crowdy for the question. So the 11.2, I know is being looked at. The main questions from my office is we have a lot of ARPA funded open positions. I have yet to sit down with them. I'm supposed to sit down with ARPA this week to figure out whether those are necessary. I do believe part of it will be, and I probably don't know the number on that yet until I meet with FRF. The rest of it, obviously, we're gonna have to do an assessment on what's out there. And I think I understand the reasoning, and obviously whatever we have no use for, we'll report to the BNF committee. It is a large number that's still outstanding out there, but we will probably need a portion of that, and I won't know the exact number until I have a chance to meet with FRF on most of the open positions that are ARPA funded. Certainly, I think it's a priority to try and, deploy those resources to necessary projects. But I don't know the exact number yet on what exactly the OOC needs. But anything that we don't feel like we need, we'll inform BNF for your consideration.
Your fault.
Absolutely. Thank you. So I would need to know if that needs to, your unmet need needs to be modified. Because if you're asking for vacant positions, I would need to know if they're not like eligible for ARPA funding. And that's why it'd be good when you prioritize. Then let us know what actually needs to be moved forward with general funds. General funds sometimes is the easiest funding to access, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's in the best interest of the navigation to allocate general funds when we have all this ARPA funding that we need to draw in. And I'm gonna be looking for that in all of the programs. I'm not sure if the oversight they're asking, but I think at least at budget and finance, we should be asking what's the plan with ARPA. We'd asked the president's staff prior, and I don't think we've heard an update from them in maybe like 2 months regarding how they're drawing down these ARPA dollars. So I think maybe after this budget, we'll have to continue to take that under our new program. Thank you. Those were my questions. Those were answered. I do have one last question. Your GWA. So last year, personal lapse savings fund was used. I don't see that it's used. So did you have this? Are the programs then? This would should we expect the programs are covering that additional cost with their allocation? I just need to know where we're at on how the programs. So that would be the question. How are you using your budget allocation to cover that GWA cost? Thank you.
From fiscal year 23.
Yes, this is.
Zelly Grady, on the, before you go to the GWA question. For the ARPA discussion, are you envisioning a directive to programs between like now and the comprehensive budget to analyze the running fees and say, this might be FRF eligible, like if they're asking for an extra position or they want $200,000 to do X, Y, or Z? Or are you only, and I'm saying all programs, are you just envisioning that under the programs under our jurisdiction?
I'm envisioning, and I thought of Mariah Carey when you said that, so sorry. All of the programs.
Okay.
Because we haven't worked on like, because we're using permanent trust fund interest, right, for some of our shortfall. And the 5-year plan, whatever that looks like, and we're bumping up money. But we have this ARPA funding, and there has to be someone like this committee to say, you could ask for all the general funds you want, but we have ARPA money that could be used. And if you're not gonna access it for your administrative costs, then we're gonna start reallocating it. I know that it's not until June, but that's a short time frame. Like, we need to consistently have that conversation. And that's why it's good when OMB says like, you know, their expenditure, right? So I don't want to get into the nuts and bolts, but we'll see, like, they're spending at half the rate. There's 49% of expenditure when we should be at 75 plus right now. So yeah, the exhibit E.
Okay, so basically
Where's the-
analyzing their exhibit in the
Yes.
context of that. Okay. We could really go down a reallocation rabbit hole, so I'm gonna do that, but
I'm willing to do that.
well, if you want to, I think the focus should be making sure there are positions to actually spend the money. So if we've got the controller's office or anyone else and say, oh, we're gonna claw back 11 million and they're about to bring on contract hires or other people, then none of the money's gonna get spent. The same thing goes for LD. Second thing is the political will of the prior council was not to support basically the reimbursement of the general government functions of the navigation council. I know you were very forceful on that. You want to direct services at the chapter level. And so this would be kind of 180-degree about face from what the council decided previously, but it would be a very quick way to spend money since most of our dollars that are expended are personnel costs that are general government services that could be under, is it 6.1? So it's totally something we can do, and I think that that's one of the directives we need to start getting from Mel, from the controller's office, is that calculation. But if you think about it, we got $1 billion, and if you have personnel costs, is say the budget's $200 million, I think it's $110 million, $120 million in personnel costs. We still have $900 or $800 million to spend, you know, so. Okay, well, let me start looking at this direct.
So actually, quick, I want to correct something that you mentioned. I've been pretty consistent in this committee and during the budget process on spending the ARPA dollars because they were allocated through the council. You know, I could vote red from 1 of 24, but I can hear on this committee, and we've asked during the last budget, fiscal year 23, was the programs to start identifying what is ARPA eligible to start cracking away at that $180 million. So that's out there. And so, how do we get the programs to spend down those dollars? And it's
Yeah.
very minimal to this point.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that we had tasked, DOJ, I think Chair is working on this, is there needs to be modifications to the administrative support that 10% essentially, so that other types of functions can be fulfilled. Because most of that is just administrative support for ARPA projects as opposed to administrative support for general government services. And that's where we could create a distinction to, or liberalize the program so that it'd be easier to spend. Because all of a sudden you're paying, you know, an office specialist salary at ARPA instead of, even if they have nothing to do with ARPA projects. Government service. So I think we'll have that conversation Friday, Chair, make sure we have that report on the agenda. But let me just jot this down for a directive on getting, at least on the needs side, that condition by.
Mr. Clifford, yeah, sometimes I feel like you're more of an agent than pro tem, but I'm just trying to be fair.
You asked for the radical, so I'm ready for the radical. So that's why, so look, we got this great directive.
Yeah. I feel like we debate on a lot of the issues, and if we can just get, just like my request done. I'll be good with that.
Okay. Well, with that said, committee members, I think do you have any further questions or discussion? Still have an amendment there.
I had a question on the GWA.
Oh, yeah, that's right, sorry. Can you answer Doug Rising, do you have it?
Yes, thank you, Vice Chair Pro Tem Slater, and thank you, Delegate Crowdy, for the question. So there are two things I want to address based on your question and comments. So Robert will answer the GWA question, but in regards to the unmet needs, none of that is planned for ARPA. That's why it's in the general fund piece, but certainly to your point, maybe we can visit if there's ARPA eligible. I'll let you do the GWA.
Thank you, members, important chair. So Honorable Crowdy, the GWA was not part of the, or it is part of the programs absorbing the budget in FY24. As you recall, last year, there was I believe there was an amendment to utilize the personal lapse to cover the prior year. So the programs are going to have to start absorbing that this year. So you'll probably see a lot of their programs short on their personnel this upcoming year. And I believe that's kind of what it sounded like they're going to try to do again this year. So you're basically delaying, you're getting credit off of the personal lapse, and then in the future somewhere you're going to have to end up paying for it. Just essentially, that's kind of what you're doing.
Could you just give me later before comprehensive budgets, just an example of what that looks like, just the impact on the program's budget?
Okay.
Because I'm not sure what the new legislation that was passed, creating this fund, if that's going to mitigate, or, because it's my understanding that programs then have to find, or maybe it comes out of your operating or other things to try to meet that GWA increase, and if there's that ripple effect, or the intent of your fund is to fix that.
Yeah.
Okay. What does that, what was your effect?
No, but that's when that's it's up to the council to decide that recommendation.
Any further questions?
If I may, we actually created a schedule of the GWA for 2023. And $4.6 million actually came from the personal lapse. And there's no, the programs, I'm assuming, are covering it this year, so essentially, all the programs in the general fund are covering the 4.6 at this current point in time until there's something to be done with the general, of the personal lapse to cover that, I'm assuming, so. And I believe that President's office may release that schedule, because that's who I did the schedule for. And I can actually give you the schedule also to show the differences if you like. And I tried to implement into that schedule that we were talking about this morning. Because it does get blended with the general fund. I can't see it the way the budget was put in last year, but we could probably create the schedule to show that off there. Thank you.
That would be next meeting.
Yeah, because the recommendation. Priority the funding system. You want to make sure that one thing that it's the fourth and third one, funded, you don't know it's for that recommendation. Then we get it breaking a lot. Numbers. We're chair. A question while we're talking about the personal lapse. When will that be ready?
Okay. So we were actually working on the calculation. We did it the last payroll, but then the new payroll hit, so we're trying to update the numbers now to the payroll that just happened. So I'm not sure exactly. Usually it's at the end when budget and finance is actually doing the comprehensive budget, which goes to NABI, in which we actually have the number. I know that Office of Management and Budget, Office of Controller, and DPM need to meet on it to come up with the ceiling. So we'll probably have this payroll's number soon. If we wait another week and have that payroll hit, then we'll have updated numbers, more updated numbers that we can meet on. But it just depends on when Budget and Finance will want that schedule also. Thank you.
So you base your GWA projection off of the kind of where Lynn's payroll is, it's not off of the total number of positions that are budgeted.
The actual schedule is based, the personal lapse schedule is what I understood Delegate Damon to ask for. So we're actually calculating how much savings will be from the
They're
personal.
saying how much is going to be available.
Yes, yes, sir.
But any other questions, amendments?
A motion for an amendment. Sure. If Office Legislative Council can read that amendment into the record. Just, I think it's swapping out forms.
Yes, may I, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Thank you. Amendment to legislation number 0183-23. Replace exhibits A through E with the new exhibits A through E provided by the Office of the Controller on August 8, 2023, attached here to, in parentheses, dated 8/8/23 at 4 p.m. Number 2, renumber or reletter succeeding paragraph sections and exhibits as necessary and appropriate. The Office of Legislative Services and the Office of Legislative Counsel are authorized to make technical edits to this action and its exhibits to implement the committee's intent. This amendment supersedes consistent language of any other amendment. You want me to go through the exhibits? Line items? Okay, so the exhibits attached are the ones that were provided by the Office of the Controller yesterday on August 8th, and they're notated 4 p.m. And those have been provided to all the committee members.
Is there a second, committee members?
Second.
A second from Delegate Crowdy, and a motion from Delegate Damon. Committee members, is there any further discussion on the legislation? Number 1. Hearing none, how do you vote, Delegate Damon?
I will agree.
Delegate Crowdy, how do you vote?
I vote green, yes.
Delegate Hassett, how do you vote? Delegate Birch, and Delegate Begay, are you hiding somewhere? Delegate Begay, go twice. Okay. No, Delegate Begay. We have a vote of 4 in favor, 0 opposed, and 2 not voting. Chair. And number 1, committee members, if there further discussion on legislation 183, 23.
What's the directives? How did you want to move forward? Did you want to move forward collectively, what the directives are after? You want to add that to the legislation or after the vote?
It seems like for the past few years, they've said don't do directives in legislation. Do it after you pass legislation, like all types of legislation. And what I've learned previously is we could do one that is specific to each legislation right after, or a comprehensive one after we passed or considered all of the legislations. And my preference would be the latter, because what if you think about something related to the controller's office after you hear from them? The other option is, and either that's at the end of this budget special meeting, or we just prepare everything, we all put our heads together and we pass it on Friday. And on Friday, we have that as an agenda item to pass a comprehensive directive. So if you think of anything in the next few days. And the one thing I'd say is now, I think we're moving towards passing this legislation. After this legislation, I need to leave. So I have to pay another $8 million for a rental car. My truck is finally ready. Everything's going to take over. And then I'm going to put in my notes an email out to the committee, the what I believe captured a lot of the directives, and I hope the staff will do the same as well. Right now, committee members, do you want to do a comprehensive one on Friday, or do you want to do a comprehensive one at the end of this special budget meeting? Because we still have to pass the OMB budget on Friday. Remember, because it's not available until tomorrow, and I'll bring everyone back into one. So it's Friday, okay?
Yeah.
And I'll give you time to send you an email. Okay, and then for our legal to put it into a directive on Friday.
On Friday, yeah.
No, but I mean, but if we get something to you in the next day, you do all the time.
Yeah, we can tomorrow.
Just give it a day. Make her do something. Okay, committee members, is there any further discussion on 183-23? Okay, we have a second reading of legislation.
Page chapter number 018-23, an action related to budget finance committee, approving and recommends the budget finance committee for year 2024 budget for the nomination office of the controller and related matters to be included in the nomination FY 2024 of that extra budget. So the new exhibit will be so amendment to the legislation 0183-23, there is one in the place exhibits A through E, the new exhibits A through E, provided by the office controller on August 8th, 2023, attached here to dated 8/8/23 at 4 p.m. And then renumber or re-letter succeeding paragraph section that exhibits as necessary and appropriate. The office of the legislative service and the office of the legislative council are authorized to make technical edits to this act and exhibits to submit the committee's intent. The amendment supersedes inconsistent language and any other amendments. Sure.
Thank you very much. So you're doing, how do you vote? So you're probably
Guys have a written on the main motion?
on the main motion, exactly. Delegate Ezra, how do you vote on the main motion? Agree? Just see he's under his desk, ready to sit there now. Things is big plus, but it's all being here in time. Delegate Parrish, you vote green? Is that good? Okay, 4 in favor, 0 opposed, and 2 not voting. Congratulations, controller.
That wasn't so bad.
Well, the office of the controller budget sets the tone for the other budgets, so other programs know that what we're looking for every year. And I think, again, it's just understanding with, because of the, it could be because of the administration, we weren't given information that historically were given. So we're just trying to make lemonade here.
It's good.
How come Beyonce was there, assigned to the mayor this year? Or selected? We have John Lord.
I mean,
My brother would love that.
it costs too much. And how much the Eris always tickets, they're like 10 grand a ticket or something? Yeah, it's not gonna, her fee is probably like. Sponsors, Shanti Eric and Danny Simpson, how does this? Okay. Sorry, do we have a motion?
Motion.
Motion? Is there a second? Second, Delegate Hazard. So the OMB presenter is going to approach the present. It's not like a day, it's what do you call it? Presenter there?
Okay, no chance, before we get started, I did ask for digital copies, are we gonna also get digital copies from OMB? And then for the budget, are we getting digital copies for the budget?
Okay,
Or is it just hard copies for the legislation?
you're talking about the budget for 1 through 4.
Sir,
Or did you
or
talk?
whatever you're, because the only thing we have right now is in our black binder that was put on dip. So is, retirement, are they also providing a digital budget?
So, let's see here.
Oh, this is it? Yeah. Okay, so it's a hard copy. They're giving, they give it to us for districts, so I still remind them. Get it, I really love it. It's yeah. Okay, I got it off. Thank you.
And, yeah, we'll over to Alexander. Ready?
Morning, everyone. Thank you. Well, let's go, when we want to take a break.
Yeah, request an excuse.
Sure, not even here. So, you want to take a break?
Are you meeting with a government entity or this other, how can you be excused? You gotta be with a government entity.
Oh, yeah, it's like another sovereign, is that what it is?
Yeah, are you meeting with another sovereign?
Sovereign, Chalmers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well,
You're the quarter.
No, got a big fire going across the way with the president on the elephant. There's a lot of power and everything.
Okay, we're waiting for you.
Go ahead and go back into session. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here with us. Let's go ahead and give a roll call to come back out of reset. The time now is 10 or 12:18 PM. Today's date is August 9th, 2023. For the record, this is Seth Damon, pro tem chair, and we do have for the record in the room, Honorable Marlo Azar, Honorable Norman MBA, Chair Cronin, and Madam Chair Parrish, for the roll call. We just concluded, for the record of legislation 01. Was it 83? Yeah, 83. And we skipped and went over to earlier, yesterday on August 8th, there was a legislation 0182-23 that we went over and we said we were gonna come back to. So let's go ahead and go on to legislation number 0182-23. I'm going to have it read into the record, and then once we're gonna get it read into the record, I'll give a motion in a second. And then from there, I'll go over to OMB so that we can go ahead and get their budget analysis on the program. And then from there, I'll go to turn the floor over to Ms. Holmes from the retirement plan, or retirement services department. So with that, there's no legend. I'll just go read it. Legislation 0182-182-3 is an action related to the Budget and Finance Committee approving and recommending the fiscal year 2024 budget for the Navajo Nation Retirement Funds, the Department of Retirement Services, the Retirement Plan Administration Committee, and related matters to be included in the Navajo Nation's fiscal year 2024 comprehensive budget. You see that legislation was posted on the 8/7/2023, and it was eligible to be, it was posted, it was put into the hopper on 8/2/2023. It was ready for action on 8/8/23. So that legislation is there in 3 pages, but it also does have their exhibit A, exhibit B, exhibit C, exhibit D, and exhibit E. In the legislation, there's no comments supporting, opposing, or any recommendations on while it was in a 5-day comment period. Legislation 0182-23 is final authority of budget and finance committee. That colleague, is there a motion on legislation 0182-23? Motion by Madam Chair Crowdy, there's second. Second by Honorable Norman MBA. Second. That. We can go ahead and turn the floor at this time over to Master Cruddy. Did you have any request?
I don't have any questions. This was the one you added to the agenda?
Yeah.
We're gonna go through this.
Okay, well, is there any questions on legislation 0182-23? 112? If not, then I'm just gonna go straight to the vote. You're going twice. More 3 times. And with that, why not let's go for a roll call on legislation 0182-23.
Yes, Pro-Tem Chair will cover legislation 0182-23. Tomorrow, I swear, how do you vote?
Great.
Thank you. All right, so it's Jane, I will nominate the Jane, how do you vote?
Green.
Thank you, I'm on David Green, Shannon Paris, how do you vote? Hello, great. Thank you, I'm on Paris for screening, I'm on Everton as well. How do you vote? Shannon Green. Thank you, David, I'm on Everton as well. Carnival Green. Pro-Tem Chair, we have 4 members voting in the assembly. So here, not voting for the chair, and 1 member.
Thank you. That colleagues, on legislation 0182-23, there's a vote of 4 in favor, 0 opposed, Pro-Tem Chair not voting. So with that, the legislation has been approved for retirement services. So with that, congratulations. Thank you, Madam Chair, for bringing the legislation before the Finance Committee. To the retirement office of the staff here, we've gone and goes to the comprehensive budget hearing. And I think, when is our comprehensive budget hearing starting? Next Wednesday? On 16th. Next week on the 16th. I don't think that limited agenda has been formally be on that. Thank you very much to OMB staff. So I don't think we have any more legislations on the agenda, so I won't hold you hostage here for the rest of the day. You guys can go back and work on some of the things that other committees and our committees ask you all.
No,
There's-
Brad, go for a walk.
There is
Some tea.
there is a recommendation for, I know going on down on the agenda, Manager Friday, there was questions from Honorable Motto Azeret, and then also from our Honorable Vice Chair Slater and myself, and I think that correlating with that, the Vice Chair stated on record, he's gonna be working together with the staff to get all that information ready for directive after we approve OMB's budget request, and that's gonna be on Friday's meeting. So with that, I'll go ahead and I don't know if there's anything else. I don't think there's anything else on the agenda. We have item number 6 is revisits. There's no revisit for any legislation. Item number 7, open session, written announcements. I don't, is there any written announcements? No. That, is there any other comments or questions, colleagues? But there's no meeting tomorrow then, what is tomorrow? Thursday? Oh, but there is another be at 8 o'clock, 8 to 10 a.m. in the morning. And then on Friday, we have our budget and finance committee meeting at 7 at 9 a.m., correct? Okay. That, colleagues, there's no other announcements or anything else. Go ahead and get a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Madam Chair.
Motion to reset.
Reset. Why do we need to reset?
Something my car tomorrow.
Are you gonna be here tomorrow?
Yeah.
There's already a motion by I'm recognizing Madam Chair Perry's motion, so we're overriding here. To adjourn. Is there a second? Second. That colleagues, any other questions? Not. Well, no, mind doing a roll call on adjournment at 12:26.
Yes, pro tem chair, will comment on the amendment, more effort and vote. Thank you, more effort on screen, Honorable McKay, how do you vote?
Green.
Thank you, Honorable Member McKay, was great, Honorable Anderson is not party, how do you vote? Thank you, the Honorable Anderson is not party, was green, Honorable Anderson, Claire, how do you vote? Evergreen. Thank you, Honorable Anderson, here, is green, pro tem chair, we inform members of the members are opposing. Pro tem chair not voting, for one member to pro tem chair.
That, thank you very much, colleagues. With 4 in favor, your opposed, we are officially adjourned. Safe travels. Tomorrow, 8 o'clock, now.